that vortex keeps moving on you. It keeps moving to a purer and purer and purer place. That's why we say, as life causes you to know what you don't want, which causes you to ask for what you do want, every time you do that, that vortex spins in a stronger way and attracts in a stronger way. And if you don't make an effort to keep up with it, there's going to eventually be a separation between who you have become and who you're letting yourself be that you cannot stand. That's really what is at the basis of the death experience. When life causes you to be this and you don't go, then this calls you in such a powerful way that from wherever you are, you go. Do you understand that you existed before this body?
Yes.
And do you understand that even while you're in this body, the non-physical part of you exists? Yes. And do you get it, that there is a vibrational relationship between the two, and that's what your emotions are telling you? And the better you feel, the more in this moment in alignment you are with who you really are, and the worse you feel, the more out of alignment. Well, as you get that, you know everything that you need to know, because you now know that there is a you that is expanding, and if you're going to feel good, you got to keep up. You got to keep up. Keep up with what? Keep up with the expansion. What does that mean? Keep up with the loving, positive end of every vibrational wave. I know what I don't want. The source within me knows what I do want and holds that ground for me. And if I step away from it, I'm going to feel less good. So what happens is, the longer you live and the more you put things into this vortex, the more you cannot bear it when you step away from who you have become. That's really what it means. Esther's thinking that maybe Abraham should write a little disclaimer on that thing that you sign when you come in that says, oh yeah, we meant to tell you you can't go back. Because you know too much. You know too much. Once you know who you really are, and you don't keep up to speed with who you really are, it's more painful than it was before you knew who you really are. We just want to help you let yourself off the hook just a little bit by saying to you that because you have trained yourself by virtue of your personality, by virtue of your occupation, by virtue of your occupational quest, you have trained yourself to be a dynamic focuser. And it's been important to your craft to focus on the physical environment that you are involved in. In other words, it's not an easy thing to excel at the physicality in the important way that you do and ignore reality at the same time. So for you, we would suggest compartmentalizing. In other words, when you're in that physical mode of focusing on the physical things that you do, give it your undivided attention. But then for every hour that you spend doing that, give yourself an equivalent hour of feeling for the sensation of the vortex. In other words, you can be both. You can be powerfully intertwined in the physical world of baseball, in the physical world of business, in the physical world of interpersonal relationships. You can be powerfully focused in this physical world and at the same time be someone who hangs around in your vortex. In other words, you can get in there, you can see your world. This has been a conversation of bringing that world into this vortex. And we think that you and a lot of other people have been seeing them as separate worlds. Okay. Like there's this physical world and there's this in the vortex world. And the only reason that we talk about this in the vortex is because we are wanting to help you all compartmentalize so that you find some way to separate yourself from the details of the physical action world and discover the emotional world of what's in the vortex. Here's the premise that you're really wanting to begin all of this with. Okay. And that is, and whether you call it a vortex or whether you call it being in the zone or whether you call it being up to speed with who you really are before you find your true speed, pretty good, is get in the vortex and then do it. In other words, there are so many people that until they achieve the physical prowess that they are wanting to achieve, they don't let themselves go into the vortex because they need the manifestation in order to pat themselves on the back. But it's the backwards approach. In other words, you got to get into the vortex and then do whatever it is you do. And so therefore, there is no reason for the first video, only the second. Because that would be like saying to someone who wants to write masterful music, just get out there and be ornery and write a really good song and you'll feel better. When the true answer is, get in the vortex, tune into the wholeness of who you are, let the song flow through you. And, in other words, it's the cart before the horse thing. And so what we really want to say to you in a way that we think you can hear it now more clearly than ever before is all of these processes that we offer were for the sake of sort of training your ability to focus. In other words, to show you that you have the ability of complaining or praising, that you have the ability of leaning negative or leaning positive, that you have options and you've shown yourself that you have those options. But now, the emphasis that we are really encouraging to you, and we spoke about this earlier, is use any excuse in the world that you can to get in the vortex. Don't stand outside the vortex with your issue, determined that you're going to fix this issue so that you can get in the vortex. Instead, use anything, and you have endless things, use anything and everything that you can to get into the vortex. And then everything else will take care of itself. Okay. If you let your undivided attention and your dominant intention, the thing that matters more to you than all other things put together, to get in the vortex, to consistently get into the vortex and to milk it when you're there. Okay. If you let being in the vortex be what matters most, all of those problems that have produced all of these solutions will appear to you, in other words, and it takes the trying out of it. But there's something in this physical world that says because it's easy, or even more, because it's joyful, you must not be paying enough price. You're supposed to suffer. You should get on that pitching mound and pitch until your arm aches. You should get on that focus wheel that Abraham has offered and practice it until your mind is numb. In other words, you should do all of these exercises. You should suffer your way into the vortex, is what humans want to say. And we say, no, just get in the vortex. Use the easiest thing in the world that you can to do, to get in there, focus, think it, do it, drink it, whatever it is, get in the vortex, get in the vortex, get in the vortex. And as you consistently do it, it is our promise to you that the universe will deliver to you the path to all the dreams that you have dreamed. And then we want to say it's the path that is the exciting part. In other words, if we could just zap you with success and boom, you're there, you'd be sitting in another audience with your hand up. I went through the eye and I experienced the light and now I'm bored. In other words, it's an ongoing process. It never ends. Stir it up, put it there, find your way in, love it, stir it up, put it in, find your way there, love it. It's a never-ending process, you see. If you are in the vortex as you go to sleep, and therefore in the vortex when you wake up, that in the waking state, as you're translating back into something that's meaningful, you could have something that feels more tangible about what's been going on. But you have to understand that everything that you call physical is a translation of vibration. As we're visiting with you here, we're not whispering words to Esther that she is repeating. We're giving her blocks of thought. And Esther is receiving those blocks of thought at an unconscious level and then finding the physical word equivalent to convey the meaning that we are offering. And so a similar thing happens. When you reemerge into non-physical, you are intertwined with and interacting with that larger part of you and all that the larger part of you interacts with. And when you awaken back into the physical experience, that's when you translate that experience into something that is meaningful for you. And so what we are suggesting to you, and we think it is really the basis of the question that you're asking here, as more often you tune yourself in that higher frequency through meditation, through basking, through appreciation, leaving behind those resistant vibrations, especially prior to going to slumber. as you take your sleep and therefore reemerge into non-physical, as you come back, you will have more and more to interpret. But the thing is, as you interpret what is non-physical through your physical lens, it's going to come out in physical things. That's why you don't think you're doing it already. And so what we want you to consider is that non-physical then is a state of being that I am achieving. And when I reawaken into this time-space reality where I'm focused, then I'll translate what I know into these physical terms. And in the same sense, that's what we're talking about bringing those physical things that you know as physical life into the vortex. Let's see if we can find another way of saying it for those holdouts out there. People want to know what non-physical is like. And we say we have no eyes, so we do not see, and we have no ears, so we do not hear, and we have no nose, so we do not smell. In other words, when you take the physical sensing out of the experience, you all might say, ooh, non-physical doesn't sound that great. And yet what non-physical is sensing on many other deeply satisfying levels. In other words, so every time physical man is attempting to understand what is non-physical from his physical format, he comes up with fairy tales at best and real distortion at worst. And we are not really big on trying to describe what is non-physical to you in a way that makes you like it or understand it better. Because we want you to understand that this consciousness that is non-physical is focused into your physical time-space reality. In other words, with all that we are and all that through those like you have caused us to become, our greatest satisfaction is to focus out here on this leading edge. And we think that's the part of what we know that most physical beings don't know, that we most want to enhance in a way that you really get it. You all are living the leading edge. You've become so accustomed to thinking that non-physical is perfect and that you're here being trained or to try to prove your worthiness so that you can then catch up with this non-physical of perfection. And we're wanting you to understand that the big picture isn't the way that you have painted it to be. We are non-physical energy. You are the leading edge of that non-physical energy. You're sifting and becoming more, and we're becoming what you've become. And in none of that are we left out of the details of your physical world. So when you want to know what non-physical is like, non-physical is seeing the bluest of the ocean and the clearest of the sky. It's seeing the most beautiful of the flora and fauna. It is understanding the greatest intelligence of the human. Yes. In other words, being non-physical doesn't mean having a departure from what you know as physical. This is the leading edge of creation. So, did you follow that so far?
Yes.
So before the you that you know as you came forth into this physical body, Source was immersed in physical, watching the extension of those like you, receiving the data that you are throwing back, and dreaming the dream of that which your life caused you to dream. Have you ever considered what non-physical was like pre-earth? It's a new thought, isn't it? So what was non-physical like pre-earth? It's hard enough to figure out what non-physical is like post-earth, but what was non-physical like pre-earth? Well, it was consciousness as far as it had evolved, and it was full of all of the expectations that had been garnered from all of the exposure to all of the life experience that all that is had evolved to. Yes. So now let's fast forward. So now here's non-physical energy, and earth exists now. And non-physical energy. Does non-physical energy exist separate from earth? Could it? No. It could not. Is earth an extension of what is non-physical? Of course it is. Are humans upon the planet extensions of non-physical? Yes. Of course you are. As you explore and become more, now who's an extension of who?
Both.
And is there any way really of separating one from the other?
Right.
There isn't, is there? So now back to your important question. why can't I remember anything that was before this? And we say, why would you? Why would you reach back when everything that we are